Hello, welcome to My Life in Pixels. It's Frankie Ward here, and currently I am in a kind of post-industrial hotel room in Dallas. I moved here this morning because I finished up working on DreamHack Dallas Masters, or DreamHack Masters Dallas, I should say. And so I trekked like literally 3 minutes Uber down the road, so not really a trek at all, and set up here, and then I popped off to go and visit the new Complexity HQ, which is where the Dallas Cowboys are based, in an area of Dallas called Frisco, I believe. And there I met Jason Lake, who is an absolute legend in the esports world, and someone I've been in the same building as but never actually spoken to. And my word, he's so lovely. And I could understand why so many people, so many of my colleagues in this industry have said that he's a fantastic person. And he really, really is. And so I wanted to find out more about his history because he's been part of esports since 2003. And I wanted to find out about the future, the fact that they're with the Cowboys now, and some of the bits in between. And when we were talking, he just revealed that they have decided to bench Stanislaw from the Complexity CSGO lineup, and they're bringing in a very young player called Obe, who's been spotted on FPL, which is where a lot of young talent is spotted. So we talk a little bit about that in the podcast. Now, I apologise, this is a very, rough introduction, and the reason is I don't have Audacity that I normally edit with. I am using my Chromebook, and I'm using Google Drive plugins to edit, and it's kind of crashing my PC. My computer doesn't like me right now. In fact, no, I'm literally, as I'm saying this right now, my computer has just shut itself down. So in other words, the struggle to get this out for the Wednesday deadline I set myself is real. Very, very real. So if you're listening to this, it means I managed it. So thank you so much. Let's get into the podcast because I can't wait for you to meet Jason. He's incredible. But it means I don't have any music or anything fancy in this episode. We're just going to go straight in, and I'll talk to you about DreamHack Dallas and what's next on the other side. Enjoy. So Jason, where should we start? Should we start with the first video game you ever played?
Oh my gosh, you're gonna go that far back.
Yeah.
I was playing Atari 2600 way back in the day. The first video game I ever probably played, back in the day they had these handheld American football games where it was just red blips going back and forth. So my parents would pop a battery in, and when we'd go on long road trips, that would keep me kind of from driving them crazy. But then we moved on to Atari and the Nintendo systems, and eventually up to PC when PCs were a thing. So I've been gaming a very long time.
Did you ever play that Madden where you could get an ambulance on the pitch and it would run all the players over? I don't know if you've ever seen that bug.
I did. I have played all of those games and spent... My youth was comprised of playing sports and playing video games. And I grew up in the 80s, which was a different time than now, where you were kind of either a jock or a nerd. And it was kind of strange to be an athlete and play a lot of video games, but that was me. So I had a deep love of competition and a deep love of video games. So once I kind of saw esports was a thing, and it was kind of already in the birthing section of its history, I was immediately drawn to it.
When were you first aware of esports?
2002-ish is when I first, I'd been playing Counter-Strike for a while, but I didn't know there were like organized teams and organized events and had CPLs. So I discovered that in about 2002, and a light bulb immediately went on. That led me to founding Complexity in 2003.
How, that seems very fast. You discover it in 2002, and suddenly you've got a team in 2003, and it's a legitimate 1.6 team.
Yeah, I mean, back then there weren't a lot of teams, period. And the only, I guess you could say, truly professional team in North America was Team 3D. We were one of the very first teams to start signing player contracts, one of the very first teams to be incorporated. And really kind of approach it from a business. I was a little older, and I was building a law firm at that time. So I approached it immediately from not only the passion of gaming, but a true desire to turn it into a functional, profitable business.
How did you know it could become that?
I don't know. I guess I just, like I said earlier, I had a light bulb moment where I saw the intersection of competition and video games. I had zero doubt in my mind video games are going to be a huge part of the future. Back then, DSL was just starting to be put in offices, and the internet was just beginning to come of age. And when I saw people playing together online and then organizing to go to tournaments, I knew it was a digital sport for a digital future.
And your player name is One.
One, yeah. I had different ones. I had J Lake or Lake, and I was playing Counter-Strike one day. I think it was what was it? Ice World, DE Ice World. Just like it's an all-out frag-a-thon, and I just wrecked around, and I just switched my name to One, and I was like, yeah, I like that. So when I started Complexity, we were trying to decide on the tag, and at the time there was an old school team out of Europe called Eolithic, and they were EOL. So we looked at EO capital L, we're like, hey, we'll be COL, CO capital L.
But now you've rebranded.
Yeah.
You've dropped the capital L. Was that quite hard?
Yeah, we dropped the capital L, decided to go capital COL. A lot of times, I don't know that there's many people that are as serious about the history of esports as I am, or people that are more proud of the legacy of the organization than I am. But like I said in a video around the rebrand time, you can't let your anchor in the past keep you from moving forward into the future. And it was difficult, not just practically difficult, to execute a large-scale rebrand on such an old, historic team, but it was emotionally difficult. I picked the red and black because when I played high school football in Lamar's, Iowa, this little town, the name of the team was the Lamar's Bulldogs, and the colors to this day are red and black. So I had like a lifetime of affiliation with red and black, and switching it over was definitely emotionally difficult. But it wasn't something we rushed into. We spent a year and a half here in Dallas, and it was unanimous across the organization that for the long-term viability of this company and to where we want to go, that a closer alignment with the Cowboys blue and their logo was the right direction.
Well, we'll come to the Cowboys a bit later, because that's the present. That's happening right now. We're literally sat in the Gamestop Complexity High Performance Training Centre.
Yeah.
I will get the name right later. You can school me on that one, Jason.
Gamestop Performance Centre.
Thank you very much. The big Complexity star on the outside is so exciting when you come here. It's incredible, and we'll definitely talk about that. But 2003, then you establish the team. Where do you go from there? Because as you say, there's only one professional team, one other professional team, Team 3D in North America. How do you actually get that team off the ground?
I paid for it.
Yeah.
Truth be told, I thought it would be easier and quicker to monetize a brand in esports back then, but that wasn't the case. Mainstream consciousness and blue chip Madison Avenue were actually further behind than I imagined, and they were slower to catch up. So in the interim, I invested like $500,000 of my own money over the early years of Complexity, travel and website and staff and players and just because I really believed in where it was going. But there was very little money to be had in the early days. Counter-Strike players were making like $1,000 a month, and people thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's making $1,000 a month, which is comical today, but back then, coming from nothing, if you could make 12 grand a year plus prize money playing a video game, it was pretty special.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that was like at the time, especially I suppose as people didn't understand, and people don't understand today,
right?
But they understand better, especially as now you can literally show them a photo on your phone.
Yeah.
Katowice filled with thousands and thousands of people, and go, well, this is what it is, and then they're like, oh, okay, wow, I'm not necessarily the one with the program. This person is the future, but. Yeah. Was it 2006 you guys entered CGS, the Championship Gaming Series?
We started negotiations around that time frame, and then in 2007, that summer, we did season 1. 2008, we did season 2. And at the time, I took a good amount of heat, both 3D and Complexity winning in the Championship Gaming Series. But the reality of the situation is I'd put so much money into the company, it was just not becoming sustainable on my personal side. I was a real estate lawyer, and real estate was really kind of taking a downturn at that time, leading up to the crash in 2008. So being in the business, I knew that there was something seriously wrong a couple years before 2008. So when they came along, DirecTV, News Corp, and the global league that was the Championship Gaming Series, and said, hey, we're going to pay every gamer $2,500 a month base. So that was 2.5 times higher than I was paying, and there's just no way I could pay $150,000 a year in base salaries before all the other incidental expenses of running an organization. So whereas a lot of people were really kind of like, man, why did he do it? It's kind of like, I wasn't going to tell my players who had been loyal to me and really worked super hard to try to help all of us build this complexity thing, that they couldn't take this awesome opportunity and be on TV every summer and more than double their salaries. So there wasn't a lot of choice. And in the early days when we talked about CGS and the people that were behind it, Emmy award-winning producers, and they were doing a good job of recruiting a lot of big names from around esports, Red Eyes of the world, and DJ Wheats, and it looked like it was really going to be our coming out party. I was really bullish about it and really excited about it, as were a lot of people, and so we jumped in head first.
And tell me what the show was, because for people like me, I mean, my first live esports event was 2015.
Right.
So I never experienced CGS in 2008. I never got to listen to Marcus casting in the 97 or something when Quake was first having LANs. I never got to experience that. So I'm really curious to know what CGS was, what it was like, what was that product?
The way they did it is you had different games: Counter-Strike, Dead or Alive fighting game, FIFA, racing game, and each. So when Complexity would play another team, all those games would play each other back to back, and then you'd add up the points to see who actually won the competition. The theory itself wasn't that bad. The execution, they were trying so hard to make it palatable to a mainstream audience that they lost their core audience. They wanted to make it very kind of Hollywoody and very kind of sportsy at the same time, but they neglected the esports core. The rule sets that were forced into place due to time constraints on television and things kind of sucked the life out of some of the more important games. And it was very apparent early on in the process to those of us from esports that this wasn't necessarily what we'd signed up for, what we thought it would be, and our voices were loud and frequent in the board meetings, saying that we didn't believe in this direction, but we were always overruled by the people that wrote the checks and had a lot of Hollywood awards and things like that. I know their intentions were good. Their execution was just poor, and it was an unfortunate experience leading up to the 2008 economic crash.
How did you find out it was all over? Because I heard that it was sudden.
It was brutal. I decided, between the decline in my law firm revenue and the fact that I was spending more time on Complexity than my 5 law firm locations at that point, to sell my interest in that and move my family to California in an attempt to go all in on this thing, to see if there was something I could do to improve what was going on. So my family left Georgia and moved to California in May of 2008. We filmed season 2 that summer, and then in November of 2008, we all got calls and said they're shutting down the whole league. So I went from owning Complexity, owning a law firm, to finding myself in California unemployed in a state that I wasn't licensed to practice law in. So that was one of those moments your wife looks at you. It's kind of like, what have you done with our lives? So that was definitely one of the worst parts of my life, and it was an incredibly difficult time, as it was for many people. And I had a famous quote before the first season of CGS where I said, if this doesn't make it, I fear that esports will be dead. And practically speaking, after the 2008 CGS implosion, esports was pretty dead. There were no sponsors to speak of, not just because of CGS, but because of the global economic meltdown. And it was kind of the dark ages for esports.
What did you do next?
The next thing I did was really do some soul searching, and at the end of that, I decided that, against all my better judgment, I wasn't going to give up on esports and Complexity specifically, and bought the intellectual property rights back from DirecTV. I called up a good friend of mine, Jason Bass, and another friend, Alex Conroy, and said, look, I don't have the energy, the money, or the time to do this by myself anymore. So they came on to own it and help me run the operations, because I had to go out and find big boy jobs that actually could pay the bills, and esports was not paying any bills back then. So we didn't have any players under contract, we didn't have any staff, we didn't have a website, we didn't have anything. Basically had to do it all over again.
And in 2013, there's still actually a webpage, and it says, CSGO, we're back.
Yeah.
What was that moment like for you?
Yeah, it was great to get. We had a 1.6 teams too. A lot of people don't remember this. We had a Brazilian team that had fallen on it.
I was going to say, you had
Complexity
fallen.
Brazil. We worked with a lot of the top names in American Counter-Strike, from Nothing and Hiko and many others, Semphis.
Sean
Gares. We've tried our best to be loyal to Counter-Strike. It can be a difficult game because it's a budget breaker. And Counter-Strike has proven historically it's hard to keep a roster together. People have a little hard time getting along sometimes, yep. But Counter-Strike is in our blood. As we sit in this conference room, which is aptly named A-Site, and on the wall is an image of A-Site in DE Inferno, Counter-Strike has been and will always be probably nearest to our hearts at Complexity, and our recent struggles definitely pain everyone here. Although we're in, I think, 10 games right now, Counter-Strike is definitely near and dear to our hearts.
And you've qualified for ECS 7 again, something we will talk about, because I do want to talk about the Complexity team, because I first met you guys back when I desk hosted the Americas Minor at the Face It London Major.
Awesome.
So you get the team back together, and then you have some incredible players. Like you mentioned, Nothing. Jordan's like one of my favourite players I've ever met, and I got to meet him when he was playing with Complexity for the Katowice Major recently.
Awesome.
But how did you find those guys? How did you put them together?
Every story is a little bit different. Every era is a little bit different. We always just do whatever we can to field the best rosters at the time. When we picked up Jordan the first time, CS was not in a good place. CSGO was kind of starting to gain traction, but it was before the majors and everything we've seen over the past few years. But we were an early adopter once again and wanted to get in and support Counter-Strike the best we could. We had a League of Legends team at the time, so a lot of our focus was there, and it wasn't easy kind of figuring out financially how to support another 5-man team, but they worked with us, and we were back in the game.
And in terms of that roster we just mentioned, they got stolen by Cloud9?
I wouldn't say stolen. What happened, and this is the truth of the matter, we took a lot of heat for this, but in their contracts back then, there was no stickers or anything. So they announced that there was going to be sticker money at this event. We weren't even sure exactly what that meant, but historically, the players get the lion's share of the prize money, 80-20 or 90-10, depending on the time. But we would keep all the intellectual property. So if we sold jerseys or we did anything to where the Complexity name and intellectual property generated revenue, that would go to the organization to help pay all the bills. So when the sticker money came in, I believe, don't quote me, but it was like 30 grand or something. And some of the teams started saying what do we do with this? And our stance was look, intellectual property derived money like this is the organization's money. Some other teams decided to go a different direction, and we took a lot of heat for it. So there was a lot of friction between the players. Contract negotiations were not going well. It was very frustrating for me, and it was very frustrating for them, and we 100% contractually had the rights to those funds, and this is before player signatures. But in retrospect, if I go back and do it again, I would have divvied it up differently. But that was just a policy that had been in place before the era of stickers. So there was some, I wouldn't say bad blood, but there were some strong disagreements. And, I think Jack from Cloud9 had contacted them, and they're like, hey, we're looking at going over here. And it was kind of a mutual thing where everyone was frustrated. It was just kind of a negative situation at that time. And they went in and played for Cloud9 and did great things. And then we learned from that.
Yeah.
You know, after seeing where the industry is going and everything, you know, we adjusted to players get, you know, I think now 50% of the team sticker money. They get 100% of their individual signature money. So we've adapted, as we have many times in the past, and always tried to remain player friendly. But yeah, that's kind of that story.
Yeah, I was literally just about to ask, and then you told me yourself about what you learned from that.
Yeah.
So I was reading an interview with you, I think it's from September of last year, and you mentioned in the old days being a very open owner. I have watched Complexity Redemption. I watched that film this morning on YouTube, which is great because, you know, you're very, very up there with the team, behind their massive, huge monitors, because it's like 20... Is it 2014? No, it can't be 2014.
Redemption was 2004.
2004. Yes. What am I saying?
Yes.
Those monitors. Hello. So obviously you're a very impassioned leader, and it must be such an emotional thing for you because you put your heart, soul, and back then especially you put $500,000 into it, right? But then you mentioned that you had to back off. So what happened? What made you feel like you couldn't be open with the community anymore?
I mean, there was a couple different things that had happened. I've never really lost my passion for gaming. I was also in Poland early this year and screaming at the top of my lungs like
those
the old
photos
days.
Are incredible, Jason.
So
the
passion for that is still there. And I'm not one to shy away from any kind of public spotlight. I feel that I'm pretty secure in who I am, you know, the good, the bad, and the lessons I've learned. But what really started changing was having that quote-unquote e-celebrity at the dawn of esports. When people disagree with you is one thing, but having a daughter and a baby son that are receiving death threats and just horrific things being said was another. I'd have people show up to my house in Atlanta, which was a little unnerving because I traveled a lot and I didn't know who was going to show up when I was out of town, type of thing. So a lot of that negativity that was kind of spewed and direct threats that were made kind of caused me to just pull back for the protection of my family and just emotionally as well. I had to take a more pragmatic look at building this like a real business and be a little more selective about how I engaged with the community. I love the community. I love being a part of the community, but I think part of the way of having a long career in this space is kind of knowing when to step away from it. And this is even pre-social media. So now everything's exacerbated, right?
Yeah.
Everything's, you know, everything's more direct. I saw you retweet something yesterday, I think it was, where someone was giving you a hard time or whatever, and it's like anybody who's having a bad day could just spew toxic negativity all over us, and we have to be careful, in my opinion, to guard ourselves, guard our emotions, guard our mental health, and guard those around us. You know, the whole e-celebrity thing sounds absurd, but at the end of the day, I don't know, you just got to make the right decisions for your long-term happiness.
Yeah, I'm still adjusting to that. Like, I think, that tweet you mentioned when the guy was saying that I shouldn't be on stage, that was hard for me because I don't do on-stage interviews much. I normally do sideline or a desk host. So being up there on stage I think it's actually the hardest role because you don't have a team with you. You are really exposed. In esports, we don't tend to even do rehearsals of the on-stage introductions or anything like that. We don't tend to have scripts. We don't have an auto cue. We don't have anything like that. So you literally need to go on stage and try and say something, hype the crowd up, and still have a presence. And I'm trying to get better at also not raising my voice too much because you have to contend with the in-ears and things. And so I was I was on an adrenaline rush after the final because it had been a really long week and I'd been working very, very long hours and the matches were incredible, and I love Team Liquid. And so I really like Ents who they were playing in the finals as well. But for me, when I see Team Liquid do well because of their story, I've totally bought into it. And so when I came off stage and I saw that tweet, my adrenaline went down, and I still had to host a post show, and I was depressed.
Yeah.
Literally in that moment, I felt
100%.
awful, and I don't know if you found any ways to deal with that, especially now we're in this social overload.
I think you definitely need to moderate social media intake and set a certain level for whose opinion that you'll even kind of consider, right? I believe, as you grow in your career in this space, and as you grow in wisdom and experience, you have to understand that if you're just sitting in the boat of your career and it's nice, smooth sailing, that means you're not making enough waves. And no one's ever going to change jack shit without making waves. Treat people respectfully, try to treat people with love and kindness, but you have to understand, in the world we live in, no matter what side of the fence you ride on, or even if you try to ride right down the middle, people are always going to look to take shots at you. And, if I was in a position like yours, I wouldn't read any of that stuff till you're done and your job is over. And then, you have time to kind of go through all the raving good comments that are, 10 to 1 and just learn how to block out the people for whatever reason are so unhappy and dissatisfied with their own lives that they just feel that they want to shoot negativity at others.
Yeah, it is a shame about that. But on the flip side, everyone I have spoken to about you has had nothing but good things to say.
Oh, that is really kind. I find that hard to believe.
No, there's so much goodwill towards you, Jason. I remember, Moses, when I was in the green room with him, and he'd seen everything, and he was saying how incredible it is here, and it was adorable because he was wearing the Complexity jacket and Anders was wearing the Complexity leggings. So
we'll have to get you a gift before we leave.
I would love that, thank you. But I was they're in a timeshare tracksuit. It's incredible. But Moses was saying that you're the kind of person who, if someone needed help and you could help, you would do everything you could to do that. And I thought that was a lovely way to sum you up, because obviously you are a godfather of esports. And I think the thing that's very distinct about Complexity, which is quite unique, is for me at the moment, the reason to root for this team is you.
Well, that's very kind.
And so what I'm wondering is, what's the future for the team? Because you do have fantastic players, and they all have legacies and histories of their own, particularly Shazam has been to so many different teams and has made inroads and then has seemingly got unlucky. The same with actually Stanislaw as well, when he was in that Optic Gaming lineup with Daps, and in the end, Stanislaw, I think this was maybe 2014, 2015.
Yeah. He
was on the bench, and then in the end it was actually Daps who was dropped, and Stanislaw got to stay there for a bit longer. So they've all had their ups and downs in their career, and now they've come together. And then they've got the lovely Rory from the UK repping
right.
us. Very
That's
lovely.
Right.
So
we're about to make a change. Actually, it's probably been announced while we're in this room.
Okay.
We're bringing on. We're having Stanislaw step down. We're bringing on a young man who's 15 going on 16 to see if we can start to identify talent at a younger age and try to nurture and come alongside that talent in a proper way to build it from the ground up. I think there's a lot of really accomplished, super successful players in the ecosystem, but not nearly enough. So I think for the health of the Counter-Strike ecosystem, it's important that teams come alongside younger players and teach them how to do things properly, and teach them how to handle media, and teach them how to, handle jet lag and all the challenges that players kind of sort on their own. As an insider, you probably know that there's, I don't like the word epidemic, but there's far too much mental struggle in the Counter-Strike world. It can be a glamorous life, but it can be a very difficult, demanding life, where people are constantly traveling around the world under high-pressure situations, removed from their family and friends, and just living this world. It creates a lot of problems for people. Some have been more vocal about it than others, and I applaud them for doing so. But yeah, the roster is not to where we want it yet. It's not for a lack of trying. I've made offers of damn near up to $1 million for different player contracts that haven't come through for different reasons. But we're really happy to be working with the guys that we currently have, and always looking for ways to improve the roster for the future, because I really want to see Complexity where Liquid is now. Congratulations to them. Back to #1 in the world before before the old man kicks over here.
I'm interested then. Have you seen what Carrigan's been doing with Mouse Sports?
Yeah.
What do you think of that then? Because what you've just described sounds like what you have with Carrigan, bringing in Boxic and bringing in the incredible 16-year-old Frozen. That kid is the bravest person I've ever seen on stage.
Really?
I need to learn from him. He's not phased at all. Whereas you have Brolin, who's 16, playing off Fnatic, who for me was the most devastating image of the major when they went out in the first week. And they've been working with Jens, their sports psychologist, and now he's a tough cookie on that stage, and he's learnt so much resilience and come so far in 2 months, whereas Frozen for me is a complete anomaly. But I think it's really interesting what Carrigan's doing, and I'm wondering, what you think of that.
I think it's great, and I think the teams that can find the best mixture between that aged experience and just the young, really hungry players are going to be successful in the coming years. This current guard of Counter-Strike players, isn't all going to be around in 5 years, right? It's a demanding career. Many of them will move on to the business side or the content side or other sides or become influencers, like Shroud or nothing. But we've always got to be looking down the road. The reason we spent a year designing the facility that we're sitting in, the Gamestop Performance Centre, was we asked ourselves, what is this going to look like in 5 years? What is this going to look like in 10 years? How can we better train these young athletes similar to how traditional sports does it? Identify them at a younger age, train them more effectively, surround them with a wholesome lifestyle that includes proper health, proper fitness, proper care to make sure that they're mentally and emotionally in a good place. How can we really take that to the cutting edge? And how can we set up a system that's always improving, rather than like, let's build this and then we're just going to be like this for 5 years. Everything that we've built here and everything we're trying to do around the Counter-Strike team and the rest of our teams is to always be improving. I think it's incredible what he's doing, with Mouse, and I think we're going to start to see that a lot more. Even Stewie to me feels, he's not, but he feels to me like a newer player. Because I remember when he was just, knee high to a grasshopper, coming up fresh-eyed, bushy-tailed, we say in Texas. Twist on Liquid, sensational player. I remember when we were looking at him, we identified him really, really early, but we decided not to move because he wasn't old enough to play at E-League, which of course, hindsight being 2020, we should have just picked him up and not played at E-League for that year. But so some of these proven, just game-changing players started really young, so we're working hard to be able to identify that, and hopefully that's what we found with Obo, but only time will tell.
How did you find Obo?
We always have different scouts watching the scene, and he's been a standout on FPL and in some of those games, and I hear that all the time, and my first reaction is always kind of like, there's a lot of people good at FPL, like, so what? But when you have like old coaches and like Warden, our manager, who's been with me since 2004, coming in and be like, no, this kid's got it. That's what they said about Twist. That's what they said about Stewie. So when they're like, this is in the line of a Stewie, this is in the line of a Twist, this is what we're seeing. Like, nothing's ever guaranteed, but like, this is what we're seeing in him, and this is what we believe he can be. We want to get ahead of it this time so we don't miss the next Twist.
And so let's talk about where we are right now. So we're in the Gamestop High Performance Centre.
Gamestop Performance Centre, that's right. GSPC.
Okay, cool. So no high performance, but it's clearly encouraging high performance. So
yes.
I'm going to let myself off the hook there.
Yes.
So 2 years in the making in terms of the deal, the acquisition by the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones?
Yeah, we closed our deal at the end of 2017. We spent a year designing this place with architects and designers and a lot of esports people and performance coaches from the Cowboys. And it took about 6 months to build. We're still not 100% done. We're still waiting on some furniture pieces from Europe and a really cool display for the public area. But we're about 95% done.
It's incredible. So I have had the tour, listeners, from Jason. Across the road, we've got a medical sports therapy hospital. There is a stadium, a 12,000 or 14,000 capacity stadium, the Ford Centre, which is where local students can play American football. We definitely did not have that in Maidstone, where I went to high school, let me tell you. We had a field with sort of a 300-metre track around it, not even a 400-metre track. Oh my goodness, America does everything bigger and in a lot of cases better, it turns out. But this is the actual it's just incredible to me. It's like hard to put it into words. The centre itself is very light, it's airy, it's not what we expect when we think of like LANs or we think of basements where people used to have LAN 1.6 events. You've got the shop and you've got these like, I guess, LAN rooms which are actually really similar to the LANs that you see at say an ESL group stage where you have your bank of 5 desks, sometimes 6 if you've got the coach sat there. Yep. And you can change the effects. Tell me about these rooms.
Yeah, the 2 main training rooms were set to perfectly emulate the stages of esports around the world, where we have, each room has its own thermostat where we can adjust the temperature. So say if they're going to an event in India and we know it's going to be really hot, for the weeks leading up to that, we'll make sure that it's kind of warm and uncomfortable in there to prepare them. We have multiple adjustable light systems to emulate the light, and we have sound systems that can pump in crowd noise or white noise depending on what the next event they're attending will be kind of dealing with. Obviously the best tech from our partners at MSI, and there's a lot of technology that's gone into the building, including, like I showed you, the UPS.
The big battery, basically. Yeah, tell us about the big battery.
So we put in an uninterrupted power supply in the HQ, so if we're playing online and the power goes out, which it does frequently in the spring because we have pretty strong storms, the gamer rooms will be up and running for up to an hour. So even if they're mid-match, they won't be knocked offline, and we have direct fiber enterprise lines coming into the building so they wouldn't lose internet either. So it was an investment we wanted to make sure that our players don't have those heartbreaking stories of we're about to qualify for this and then the power went out and we had to replay the match and we lost or whatever.
So what's your vision for Complexity?
I mean, my overall vision is to build, I guess you could say the Dallas Cowboys of esports, the New York Yankees of esports, the LA Lakers, whatever, Barcelona, Manchester, speaking European football, what are the world's best sports franchises in traditional sports, and take what we can learn from those and move it into the esports realm. I believe we're building $1 billion sports property, sports entertainment property. Sure, the sports are digital and you can argue semantics, but I think at its core, we want to build a company that's known for professionalism, for competitive success. We want to build something that people want to get behind and know they'll be treated right. We want to be a player-first organization. I mean, yes, we've got a business to run, so there's going to be tough negotiations at times. But even players that leave, we want them leaving saying, you know what, they really took good care of me. I would play here again, and I really enjoyed my time here. I guess it's hard to answer that question saying any less than I am, but I want to create something special that's memorable. Sometime when my children are my age, I want them to be able to say, my dad was founder of Complexity, and people's jaws drop because it's become something so synonymous with success, and it's just a sports media juggernaut, an empire, to where they're proud of their dad.
That's such a lovely spot to end, but now I feel guilty because I just want to ask you, you took off the red tie. Does this mean we're going to have a blue one soon?
I do wear a blue one from time to time, but as part of the refresh, I guess one of the good things you could say, I'm no longer tied to a tie. It was a very intentional choice, obviously, years ago, that I wanted to brand my personal brand in a way where I could walk into a large event and everyone could they might not remember the goofy old guy, what he looked like, but there's the guy with the white shirt and the red tie. And it was memorable. And it annoyed some people, but it worked. Like, anywhere I would go in esports, people would instantly know who I was, even if they couldn't recognize my face. So as part of the rebrand, yeah, sometimes I'll wear a white shirt and blue tie. Sometimes I'll just wear a blue shirt like today. Sometimes I'll just wear a polo and blue jeans and be more comfortable. So as many good memories as I had with that red tie, it is now, at least for now, been retired, and I'm free to wear what I like.
We did talk about one of your lowest points in esports, but I want to ask about what the highest point was. Now you've mentioned memories. What is the one moment, if you can pinpoint it, where maybe you've been at an event, maybe you've been even just in the office, where you've gone,
sure, everything
I have gone through has been worth it for this?
I think the most relevant one, and it is super tough to decide one. There's been some incredible highs for sure. But the most relevant one as we sit here today was May 20th, just a couple weeks ago when we opened this. We did, a grand opening and a ribbon cutting ceremony. And there were some really kind speeches given. And, I gave a short speech, and, I could look down and see my kids in the front row, and they're looking at their dad up here with some really important people in American sports. And just knowing that this thing that I started all those years ago was now operating in a tangible representation of that success. And, I've said this a couple times since then, but I think one thing that separates, the way God made people from animals is people have dreams. And we can see into the future, and we can have these aspirations, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work out, sometimes they kind of work out. But to have a tangible representation of like your dream, I think is really special, and it's really unique. So to stand in this building and to have such a tangible representation with your wife and children just looking on, that was definitely one of the high points of my career.
Jason Lake, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And good luck in London to the CS team as well.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much to Jason for accommodating me today. It was just so incredible to see the new Complexity facility, and I really hope it delivers the results that a centre like that should produce. It honestly, you have to see it to believe it's incredible. Now, I'm having a bit of a break from esports because I'm doing the PC Gaming Show at E3 on Monday. It's going to be 10 p.m. Pacific time. 10 p.m., 10 a.m., apologies. I can't wait to work with Day 9 again. That show changed my life. I've talked about this in interviews and on my blog and stuff. So I can't wait to return to it, although I'm kind of, maybe I'm going to be more nervous than the first time. I'm not sure. We'll see when I get to LA. I'm going to have, nearly a month off after the PC Gaming Show, so I'm missing a few Counter-Strike events. I'm gutted, but I also need a break, and also I'm not going to get asked to do every Counter-Strike event either, and I have to be cool with that. I'm going to get jealous because I want to be there, but I can't do everything, and also there's other amazing people. Like, I'm not the best at what I do. I think I'm good at what I do, but every tournament organizer is going to want something different as well. So I'm doing non-gaming things for a bit. I am also going to be Twitch streaming. I'm going to go to Glastonbury as well and work behind a bar and, do stuff that's not inside for once, because I spend so much time indoors, so I'm quite excited to do that. But I'm also quite scared. I'm really scared to go to Glastonbury. I haven't been since 2010, and I'm obviously a creature of indoors habit now, so it's going to be an experience and a half. In the time I have off, though, I'm going to see if I can hook up with people on Discord and record more podcasts as well, because, again, this podcast is becoming more and more sporadic. But I did meet some people at DreamHack Dallas who listened to the podcast, which was amazing. So if you're listening now, thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you, and they meant the world. Knowing that there are actual people who listen to this is crazy, so I'm going to keep on making episodes just for you. And Dallas for me was amazing because I got to do voiceovers, I was doing sideline, I was doing the stage stuff that absolutely terrifies me, and something I want to do more of and get better at, because, I'm a work in progress when it comes to the stage hosting. I'm a work in progress with everything. Hey, it's called being a human. But there was a moment when I didn't realise I was going to be doing something on stage to kind of hype the audience. I don't think that was ever originally the plan, but I think DreamHack decided to pop me on there. So I got to do a link after the pre-show going into the video that would introduce the two teams, and my producer Adam in my headset my in-ears said to me, "Can you ask everyone to stand up when you intro the show?" And I said, "Well, let's turn my house mic on during the ad break and see what we can do." So I'd actually gone out to some of the banks of the fans to ask them this in person, but then when I got the microphone on, it meant I could speak to the entire arena. So I asked if they could stand up, and then Adam said in my ear, "Can you also get them to turn their phone lights on?" So I did that as well, and it was the most amazing moment because the house lights were dark, and I asked people to turn on their phone lights, and then the whole arena, I get emotional thinking about it. Suddenly, one by one, all these lights went up, and that's all I could see. were lights and then sort of the camera in front of me. And I don't think I'll forget that for a long time. And now I want to be better at being on stage. I want to be confident, because I think sometimes when I read comments and things like that, I don't realise how many people are on my side, and that I am part of this community, and actually people want me as part of this community. And so when moments like that happen and you get to feel like you're part of something, they weren't putting the lights on for me. They were putting the lights on for Counter-Strike and for that moment we're all going to have. And I probably spent too long in America, and I'm speaking very much like an American right now. But when that moment happened, and also when I heard my voice doing a voiceover I'd written in the arena, those were moments that will stay with me, because also I don't get to hear a voice like mine normally talking about Counter-Strike in an arena like that, like doing voiceovers. That's normally man's voice who sounds like this, coming up next, these teams. And suddenly it's this British girl speaking about ENCE's recent turmoil and Team Liquid's firepower and Furia, and oh my god, man, that was something. So thank you so much to anyone who has messaged me to say that they like the podcast or like what I do, and has maybe also clapped back at some of the people who said things that aren't fair as well. I appreciate that very much. And as Jason says, if you're not making waves, what are you doing? So thank you for sticking with me. I'm going to go and cry in my hotel room and get over myself, but I love this community. I hope you'll see you on my Twitch stream, and thank you. I will see you in the next one.